Good morning. Most African Americans think that they know who and what Uncle Tom is and was. However, most of us are completely wrong. The character Uncle Tom is from the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. The novel she wrote was a work of fiction inspired by the slave narrative of a real black man named Josiah Henson. Many African Americans use the term, quote, Uncle Tom, unquote, as a derogatory against black men who live their lives outside of the groupthink of the black community and are agreeable to whites. In her novel, Harriet Beecher Stowe describes a docile and obedient Christian slave who would never try to escape or defy his master. But the story says much more than that. However, Josiah Henson, the inspiration for Uncle Tom, was a totally different person than the Uncle Tom we have come to know. Henson was born in slavery in 1787 in Maryland. He saw many things in his lifetime: his father beaten, his ear cut off and sold, his mother sexually abused and sold, and also watching his brothers and sisters being sold. He suffered every hardship as a slave long before he eventually escaped to Ontario, Canada, where he established a school for former slaves and served as pastor of a church. He returned to the United States many times to help guide other slaves to freedom. In 1849, he published his autobiography, one of the first slave narratives to be published. I will read to you a short excerpt from his autobiography that will dispel the myth that Uncle Tom is a sellout to your people. I obtained great influence with my fellow enslaved brothers and sisters, as well by the superiority I showed in my work and in sport, as by the help I gave them and the favors I agreed to do for them from impulses which I cannot consider as wrong. Though it was necessary for me to conceal sometimes what I did as well as why I did it, I have worked and encouraged others to work many an extra hour in order to show my master what an excellent day's work had been accomplished, and to win a kind word or a kind deed from his callous heart. In general, hatred or a cool calculation of my value to him was my reward, killing those hopes of an improvement in my condition, which was the ultimate object of my efforts. I was much more easily moved to compassion and sympathy than he was, and one of the means I took to gain the goodwill of my fellow sufferers was by taking from him some things that he did not give, in part payment of my extra labor. The condition of the male slave is bad enough, and heaven knows, but that of the female, compelled to perform unfit labor, sick, suffering, and bearing the burdens of her own sex, unpiled and unaided, has often oppressed me with a load of sympathy. And sometimes, when I have seen them starved and miserable and unable to help themselves, I help them to some of the comforts which they were denied by him who owned them, and which my brothers and not the wit, the daring to take. Meat was not a part of our regular food, but my master had plenty of sheep and pigs, and sometimes I picked out the best one I could find in the flock or the drove, carried it a mile or two into the woods, slaughtered it, cut it up, and distributed it among the poor suffering souls to whom it was at once food, luxury, and medicine. Was this wrong? I can only say that at this distance of time, my conscience does not bother me for it, and that then I count it among the best of my deeds, unquote. This good man was not the myth of Uncle Tom that most of us have pictured in our collective minds, so we should think before we throw this term around as a negative. There was a white character in the novel named Simon Legree. He was as evil-hearted as could be, but you rarely hear his name applied to white men these days by blacks. Is this because we didn't read the book? Or is it because it is more fashionable these days to disparage one another? He was a man who took the punishment of others and stayed on the slave plantation in order to care for others in his condition. He knew if he would escape, his people would suffer even more. He was killed protecting his people, and above all, he was a Christian who felt it was better for him to help others than to run away or be a problem maker. However, if one would read the novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, one would not see the disparaging meaning it has become in the black community. Still, like every good story, when it's told millions of times, the truth in it gets lost, and that is what has happened here. This book was written by an abolitionist as an anti-slavery novel and became instrumental to the abolition of slavery.